Welcome to the Gentleman Project podcast. I'm your host, Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Corey Moore. In this podcast, you will hear from some of the world's most dynamic people, providing you as a listener weekly access, lessons learned, and key principles about how to be a better father.
Welcome to the Gentleman Project podcast. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are honored this morning to have Jason Hewlett with us. He is an entertainer, a father, and an icon in the public speaking profession. He was one of the youngest ever inducted into the Speakers Hall of Fame, and let me tell you, Corey, he's one of the funniest guys ever.
Such an amazing entertainer. When you're listening today, really pay attention to Jason's advice on keeping promises to yourself. This is really good stuff, and it's going to make me a better father.
Jason Hewlett, thank you for joining us. It's an honor to be with you. We know each other from other business ventures and networking opportunities that we've had here in the Utah market, but Jason really is a worldwide figure. He's had the opportunity to perform everywhere, and I hear where he goes, and it's just amazing the number of people you've been able to reach in your career, Jason.
Maybe tell us in your own words, Jason, kind of what it is you do and maybe evolution of how you got to where you're at today on the professional side, and then we'll talk about how you balance that with what you do as a father.
Yeah, I started my career as a Las Vegas entertainer. I was a Ricky Martin and Elton John impersonator. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome.
From Salt Lake City, Utah to Vegas. And then I realized I wanted to do more characters than just those two guys, even though I was good at it. And so I started doing a one-man show of lots of voices, impressions. You know, from the Bee Gees to the, Louis Armstrong, when I think to myself, what a wonderful world. So people are going, how do we hire this guy? So I became known as this corporate entertainer for after-dinner entertainment at all of these big events. And actually that's where Corey and I know for sure that's where we met originally. It's probably like at an event in Park City, Utah. And then, Kirk, that's where we eventually met as well. You saw me doing those shows. But my career eventually took a bit of a shift in the sense of I was offered a Las Vegas opportunity, have my own show. And in my new book, I tell the story about that, about the casino offer, which was pretty awesome, and then turning it away just because of the promise I'd made to myself and my family and the foundation I wanted to build my life upon. And so, yeah, that's why a lot of people who know me as the entertainer, they go, oh man, you're so great. And then they go, why aren't you more famous? And I'm like, well, I made some choices, I had to turn things away in order to keep my sense of value. And so that's where my career has become more of a keynote speaker who implements the comedy and the music into a leadership presentation, really unlike anybody's done, because not very many people are doing the impressions mixed with leadership, but it really teaches leaders how to figure out their own voice, how to discover it for themselves, and how important it is to be who we are, our own voice, and help those that we employ or that we're working with, how they have their own voice as well. So it's been quite the career.
That's
I'm very
awesome.
blessed.
So, Jason, you've got a new book out. He's written several, but the new book, and he brought with him today, is called The Promised to the One. And Jason, tell us a little bit about the origin story of this book besides what you just mentioned. What made you write this book?
Well, The Promise to the One, a lot of people say, who is the one? And, it's not your boss. It's not the job. It's not even your spouse or partner. It's yourself. Who is the one? It's the person that you make the promise to, and are you keeping it or are you breaking it? And if you do break it, then you can't keep promises to everybody else. And so that's where it came from. I think the origin of the book really, I had written other books, as you said, and they turned out okay. I was happy with them, but this was the one that was really inside of me for a long time. And it did take quite a while to crank this out. You know, I was thinking about it for a long time.
No, it's a beautiful book, and as you released it, I was able to buy the e-version, and it immediately went on all of the Kindle devices in our household because I wanted my kids, who love you, by the way, to be able to read the book and absorb the knowledge that's in there. So
that's so kind of you, man. Seriously, that's a huge deal.
You're like
highest compliment you can get, honestly.
You're the best. In the eyes of my kids, you were like a superstar.
We'll keep that way. That's good.
That's great with me.
So we're talking about being fathers, balancing, work and life, and you made a conscious choice a long time ago when you had this Vegas opportunity, which is a perfect segue in my mind into talking about what it means to be a father to you, and maybe why did you make that choice, and how has that affected your life?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, making that choice, we didn't have kids when the Las Vegas opportunity came around. My wife and I drove down in our Subaru from Salt Lake to Vegas, and sitting there with a casino billionaire and being offered kind of the world, and having your name in lights, and then realizing that their values didn't match with ours. And so am I going to go down that road, or do I need to actually keep a promise to myself and my future family as to what the fulcrum choices of our lives can certainly be a tipping point, and this was. And so, yeah, we wanted to establish something of a foundational existence, a value-based business. And so that's where it went. And we now have 4 children. Right after turning down the Vegas thing, we actually then had our first child about a year later. So that was really the beginning of our lives, and we live in Salt Lake City area, and we're very, very grateful to be the parents of 4 wonderful kids. Now they're growing up. Holy cow. When they were little, we had 4 kids in 5 years. No twins. It was just crazy. And even last night, as we're trying to go to bed at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and the kids are running around the kitchen, my wife goes, man, now they're teenagers, 14, 13, 12, and then we have the 8-year-old. But she goes, this is harder than it was when they were little, and we had no chance to sleep at that point either. She goes, when does this get easier? And I go, I don't know. I'm going to go talk about it tomorrow.
So on that vein, Jason, what successes have you had recently, or what are some of the things that you have learned being a father to, I guess, tweens or new teenagers?
Yeah, the tween years are fascinatingly different from the little years, when they're growing up, and obviously they're sponges at that point, but I think they're more sponges now, which is a bit terrifying and equally awesome, because you're like, wow, they're watching everything I do. And to me, that's the most cool part of it, is that I can model the behavior that I'm hoping that they'll share with the world and become themselves, right? And so some of the successes, I guess, especially at this time during a pandemic, and my job, because, hey, had I done that Las Vegas contract all those years ago, my life would have changed in the pandemic for sure. But as the keynote speaker for events that have thousands of people attending, my career changed as well in March of 2020. And so I lost essentially all of my bookings overnight for the whole year. And that's our whole income. I don't have a backup plan. And so there is no side job. And so I think the success that I've had during this time with the children has been complete transparency. For them to see that, yes, they're going through their rough stuff, I'm going through my rough stuff, and why is Dad home all the time now? Where in the past, I would hop on a plane, fly away, go do a gig, make a good amount of money, come home, life was great, right? Now, it's like, how does Dad deal with not making a check? And how can we spin that around? How can we make it so that life is still good, still positive? We have to cancel the trips that we had going on. We have to change a few things. I think those kids seeing that's happened, and that's okay. That's a big lesson, in my opinion. That's a big success, that we're still happy and we're still liking being together. But another great success we've had would be that they've continued up on their schoolwork, that they're still engaged. They're still having friends, whether it's on the Zoom call or seeing each other from a distance. And I'm very pleased with how they've handled this crazy time, because for kids especially, this is like the wildest thing of all time, since it is in our lives as adults.
Yeah. Can I follow up with a quick question on that?
Yeah.
So you've become kind of the guru, I've seen, of parents finding themselves working from home, asking for some advice on how to do that. You've become this guru of sorts to give that advice. What advice would you give parents who find themselves completely at their wits' end, trying to work from home, manage kids with online school, and everything else that comes with the pandemic? What advice are you giving?
Yeah, in fact, right when it happened, I saw such a need for the work-from-home parent who was freaking out, going, what do we do now? So I put together like a 30-video course that was just real quick 3-minute videos saying, these are some ideas as to how you can be a better parent right now. And so some of the ideas were things like making sure that you have boundaries set, whether that's physical or just spoken. So, for example, I have an office in my house. If the doors are closed and there's a stop sign on it, then the kids know, oh, Dad's recording something, or he's on air. We can't come in here, and we have to keep the house quiet. And then for the family that may not have the home office like I have, then maybe it's just putting up a boundary for yourself and saying, guys, for the next hour, I need you not to come in and talk to me about this because I'm on a very important call. And other times, it's just about checking in as often as possible. So if we're a parent that's working for 8 hours a day in the house, we need to do our best to try to work in increments of 45 or 50 minutes. So you work for 45 to 50, then you stop, you get up. This is also helping you physically to move and to feel better about your body. And then you walk over, you check on the children. Are they doing their thing and so forth? And even taking them on a walk outside around the block, even just for a quick break, some fresh air, if we have fresh air, and with smoke.
That was like a loaded question. Like, Jason, tell us about all 30 of your 3-minute videos. So if somebody wants to find these videos, where do they go? And where do I go?
Yeah, I mean, if you just went to my website, jasonhewlett.com, you'll find plenty of stuff there.
Okay, awesome. Well, I don't want you to have to rehash those, but thank you for that. I know where I'm going this afternoon.
Some parents are probably like, well, I have little kids. How do I handle that? That's when it's really block working. Like, for 20 minutes, you're going to do this, and you're going to sit next to me, and you're going to do your work while I get to do mine, and it becomes laser-focused time. But it does work. A lot of people have found that, my goodness, I like working at home. So it's great.
So you talked about how you're setting example. They're actually seeing what you're doing now, right? And you've obviously talked to your kids about choosing happiness, kind of a thing, at home. So where are you finding these times to talk to them about these things? Where is it? Is it at the dinner table? Is it? How do you go about connecting and communicating? In addition to setting an example by what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. The dinner table is a great place. I also preach this idea of 3 mini meetings per day with your family. And so it's, if you're in the morning, wake up, everybody gets up, whether it's just the daughter that's leaving early and the boys are leaving later, having a little meeting with them and just saying, this is the plan for today. What are we going to do about it? And making sure that everything is going well. If everyone's still stuck in the house and not going anywhere, then that mini meeting is very essential to say, hey, Dad has calls at 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Need dead silence at that point. Get the dog in the backyard, stand on the porch with broomsticks to fight people off from ringing the doorbell or whatever, And then we have 3 mini meetings. So we would do the meeting in the morning, for 2 minutes. It's just a check-in. And then another one when they get home from school, or if you're already at home, then just at lunchtime. Hey, how did the morning go? Oh, I couldn't connect on my Zoom call, or oh, I can't keep focused, or oh, well, we need to feed you some more, or we need to give you better food, or something like that. Or maybe we need to go outside and exercise a little bit, get your blood pumping. And then we have the night meeting. The night meeting in our house is essential. And that's rehashing the day, letting each child tell how their day went. And they really love that, you know. They're like, well, I had friends and we did this play thing and it was so cool. And that is the best part of our day in my house. And because sometimes the family dinner doesn't happen, you know, all together. But we do our best to get the dinner going. And dinner time is awesome because you guys, right now, especially with elections that are coming up and all these things, and the kids are being fed stuff at school or over social media or wherever they're watching, for us to be able to say, hey, do you guys understand what is happening with the protests? Why is that happening? And these little kids are going, well, I heard this and I heard that. And as parents, where we can go, okay, well, let's talk about what that means. And what would you do if you could? You know, that sort of conversation is so essential to have. And that's where like a dinner that should be maybe 30 minutes turns into a 3-hour discussion and everybody's uplifted.
I think you just like touched on something that anybody who has teenagers, if you can find some type of a topic that the kids will talk about for more than 3 seconds, 3 hours sounds like a dream, right? So if I'm hearing you correctly, one of the systems that you have in your house is these short meetings. They don't take long. They don't take much planning. That's brilliant. I love that.
The 3 mini meetings.
3 mini meetings a day.
Yeah.
Jason, if I was to ask you, if you could instill one quality, only one, and I know you're doing more than one, but if you could instill one quality in your kids that would give them the best chance at success in life, what would that be?
Resilience. And I don't want that to just be a normal word that we hear a lot, but whether you call it grit or faith in yourself, resilience, it has to be. Huh. And in that belief in ourself that we can get through anything, I think that's why for me, having this loss of work for 6 months and then having to do this crazy pivot from, oh, there's no live events happening, Dad's not flying anywhere, what now? Well, what can I do from a computer? Can I do anything from a phone? Can I record something? Can I make a YouTube video? What else can we do? Resilience. That's something they're watching me do. And they're a part of it, actually. If your listeners were to go to my website or YouTube, you would see the first video that pops up is of my family holding the microphones and helping me as a virtual presenter now, as a virtual keynote speaker and entertainer, which is not a very comfortable thing as compared to standing ovations, people laughing and clapping for you. And yet the children are watching this happen and going, Dad, it's happening. And then I tell them, it's very transparent. I go, guys, look at the check I just got today for the event I did that you guys helped me with that was virtual from our house. And they look at the check and go, wow, Dad, you know, it's not nearly what it was in the live events, but they're so excited to see something being built. And so the resilience in that sense to them is exciting and is to me.
That's such an important concept for a business person or for a parent, right? Resilience. Any entrepreneur would have to have that, right, in their lives. So, Jason, what are some lessons learned? Things that you go, I could have done this differently or I could have done that differently. Any lessons learned out there that people might take from you and say, hey, I'll do that a little differently?
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, as a young father especially, I was so busy running around and doing, you know, all these events and coming home to little children. And I tell it from the stage. I mean, I'm very honest about it and say, gosh, when I was a young dad, I was not very pleasant. I wanted the kids to be almost like a better inline child than they were because they were just crazy all the time. And I wanted them to get in line. Even though I'm a fun guy on stage, at home I was not as fun. And so listening to my wife when I would voice these concerns and say, why are the kids not enjoying me or want to be around me? And she would say, well, when you're home, you're not really here. I'd be like, what do you mean? She's like, well, when you're home, you're on your phone. And I'm like, I have to use my phone for business. And she's like, no, you need to be more present. What are you looking at on your phone? Are you actually answering emails and texts all day? And that's when I had to face it and say, oh, I'm on Facebook, or I'm completely distracted. What is my problem? And eventually I tell the story where my son Romney, who's now 12, when he was 3, he and I went on a Daddy Sunday, just on a little one-on-one. We try to do that once a month with the kids, a little one-on-one. And this was our first time. And I saw him in the back of the car through the rearview mirror, and he had the biggest smile on his face. And I go, hey, buddy, are you so happy? And he goes, I like it when you're nice, Daddy, not mean, Daddy. And I was like, when am I mean, Daddy? And he goes, just not right now. Oh my gosh, how does that dig into your heart? And I started to realize when we went to McDonald's that as he's going up and down the slide and going, Daddy, Daddy, and I'm like, yeah, and he's zip, and he goes up, and he goes, Daddy, Daddy, I'm like, yeah, and he goes, zip, he goes, Daddy, 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 and I'm like, I've had enough. No, I just realized that I was not fully present. And that's when I looked at my phone, I started to just get distracted with this moment that I could have been watching him and being fully present. And that's when I realized I'm a hypocritical dad, because I was posting that we were having a fun time at McDonald's on Facebook while looking at the lives of others. And so that's when I made a conscious choice, and this is part of the promise of any parent, is to be fully present. We need to get rid of as many distractions of our own as we can. And so I held down that little app that started to shake, and the Facebook app was like, no, don't let me go. And I pressed delete, and it said, are you sure? And it did a little dance, and I did. I deleted the Facebook app off my phone. And you guys, I run my business through social media, through doing this sort of thing, and yet I couldn't control the addiction of going to Facebook as a distraction to be present from my family. And so making those conscious choices has, in my mistakes, has made all the difference.
So you mentioned one-on-ones with your kids. Is that something you're still doing? And the second question to that is kind of like, how do you turn it off? How do you decide when and how? And, is there a method to the one-on-ones and the turning off the phone, the social media, all that?
Yeah, we certainly do our best to do the one-on-ones as often as we can. I've actually come to a newer place with that, where the big one-on-one where you go take them on a trip or go do something big is almost too much, especially during this quarantine time, because we're together so much. Rather, now it's become more of just a one-on-one connection daily, whatever that might look like. So I'll ask the child, I'll say, hey, what do you want to do with Dad? What would be most fun with Dad? And one son goes, just to shoot baskets. So we go out for 10 minutes a day and shoot baskets. Or my other son wants to wrestle. Okay, so let's wrestle before bed, get your energy out. And that becomes our one-on-one daily connection. As far as monthly, we do our best, right, to take them somewhere, do something. But with these daily connections, it feels like it's always consistently happening. And your other question about how and when do you turn it off? Well, it's a matter of being completely open and having a spouse that might tell you, or the child might say something. When they start patterning the behavior that we're doing and we're like, why are they on their phone so much? You need to look in the mirror and be like, I think they're patterning my behavior, And so how do I turn that off? Well, maybe that's stopping the notifications of emails coming at you. Maybe now it's a manual process to go in and get it. You guys know, because we're all friends on social media. I'm still on social media. How do I do it? Well, I only use my laptop for it. And if I want to go on Instagram, because you can't post through the laptop, I actually have to go in consciously. I'll sit in my car or I'll sit in my office and I put a timer on that says 10 minutes. I download Facebook, I download Instagram. I do the posts and then I delete them both. I'm not kidding. I do that almost every day.
That's awesome.
That's almost like ridiculous control challenge, but that's what I have to do to control that behavior. It's a promise.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. I don't know that I've ever deleted the Facebook app unless I've gotten a new phone or something. So, wow. I'm doing a little bit of self-reflection here.
But it's not to feel bad.
No, it is.
Right?
It isn't. And that's what this podcast is about, right? Like sometimes you have those moments of reflection and you think, that's a good idea. I'm doing a self-inventory of myself right now, here sitting listening to you, thinking, I should probably do better on that, right? And it's not a guilt thing. It's how do I become a better dad for my kids, and what's the price, and what price am I willing to pay? And putting your phone down, it seems like a pretty low price to pay when it comes to having kids that turn out, right? So,
well, what's fun about it, Kirk, is as well as once you get that thing down in that way, it's fun to sit down with the kids and be like, hey, what apps are taking over your life? What's hard for you to keep control of? And then if we can sit down and let's say I don't approve of TikTok, which I don't. TikTok is the worst thing I've ever seen. But if I sit down with my daughter, who's 14 and beautiful and wants to do these, TikToks or has friends that are doing them, we sit and watch them together, behavior changes. It's very interesting how it works. And if I say to her, hey, I'm going to download this app right now, and we're going to post something together, behaviors change for both of us, and that works really well.
Jason, if you had a moment or a bookmark in your head of one of the greatest moments thus far in your life related to fatherhood, can you share that moment with us?
Oh, yeah.
If it's not too private or...
No. I'd say when we bought the motorhome, that was a defining moment for our family. And you know some of the motorhome stories.
I only laugh because I know the drama that came after buying this Class A motorhome and taking your family on the road. But I'll let you tell that story because it's hilarious. And going through Hot Springs, Arkansas was my favorite part of that story.
I know you like that story. But yeah, we bought a motorhome in 2015, a little Class C, and it was awesome. We went across the country, all the northern states, and then in 2017, the motorhome had some problems that I wish I were more of a manly man and knew that I only had to change the oil on the generator and we could have kept the motorhome, but I just took it back. I took it to the place and bought a new motorhome instead. And so, hey, I could make people laugh on stage. I don't know how to change oil in a generator. So then I just upgraded and bought a Class A motorhome, which for those listening that don't know, a Class A it looks like a tour bus. And it's almost 40 feet long. And with a Jeep dragging behind it, you're about 55 feet. It's almost illegal. You should have a CDL, but I'm driving down the road like, this is so fun. Yeah. The kids are in the back. Yeah. And we did our best to go through the South in the summer, which many people warned us that's probably not the best choice. But in 2017, we did that, and that was quite the trip. And your remembrance of, we were so excited, going to Hot Springs, Arkansas. We're going to jump in the hot springs and swim around and have a good time. Because in Utah and Idaho, there's hot springs. You jump in and you play in the water. It's pools, and it's beautiful. And so we were so excited. We drove all day to get to Hot Springs, Arkansas. I think from Branson, Missouri. We were driving down this windy road. It took us about 14 hours, and it was a road that Dr. Seuss must have created because it was here and there and everywhere. People were throwing up in the back, and I was like, guys, we're almost to Hot Springs. We're going to get up in the Hot Springs. And they went to bed about midnight, throw up everywhere, just one of those trips. And then we wake up the next morning. Everybody's like, let's go to the Hot Springs, My son had his little ducky inner tube around his waist, and everybody's excited. We go walking up with our flip-flops and our snorkels to the hot springs, and we're like, where's the hot springs? We drove through the town back and forth. We finally went into this building that said Hot Springs, Arkansas, and we're like, where's the hot springs? And the lady looks at us, and she goes, oh, my poor child. These are not hot springs you can swim in. It's a little spigot you get to look at. And my son threw down his Mickey Mouse towel. It was like, we just drove here for what purpose? And I said, are you kidding me? There's no actual springs we get to jump in? And they said, oh, no, we just pipe the hot water through through the system and people enjoy it. And I was like, wow, that's a fun trip. Let's go to Memphis. So, isn't that where your family's from?
I have some in-laws there.
In-laws, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
I remember your response to that story.
I had to send you a message and tell you that I kind of had the same experience. It's a national park, for crying out loud.
I know.
So the experience of going down there with your family and spending the summer on the road, like you purposefully took a whole summer off to have this experience. This was a defining moment in your life because you were trapped in a motorhome with your kids for 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the quarantine and what it's taught us. You know, now people kind of understand what a motorhome trip is like. After 6 months being trapped together, I used to try to explain to people what it was like on these multiple cross-country trips in a motorhome. And I would say it's wonderful, it's exciting, it's terrifying, it's demoralizing, it's exhausting, and it's a full family lifetime experience going on one simple trip. And it's the kind of things that a kid's memories of their childhood is exactly that. For example, when all these gigs went away for me this year, and I said, guys, we probably have to get rid of the motorhome. I mean, you've never seen sadness like this. This was mourning. And I said, guys, we may not be able to afford going anywhere anymore, really, for a while. And that's just the reality. And they said to us, that's our defining childhood memory, is in the motorhome as a family. Please don't get rid of it. So I said, all right, we just refi. now I'm chasing every gig, but I'm like, I'll keep this promise to you, my children.
This motorhome is here to stay.
Yeah,
there's something about getting out of the normal.
Yeah.
That creates memories, right? For all of us, whether it be motorhome or a different type of vacation or even just doing something different down the street that isn't the norm, that seems to be what memories are made of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that memory with the motorhome, that's just iconic in our family, and so we're going to keep at it. And that really was a bookmark in our lives.
So I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, because I think people will want to know how you go about this. I think everyone's a little different, but social media and phones, and as you become... I have teenagers. I have kids that are very similar ages to yours. And I'm trying to learn, how do I do this? And what should I allow and not allow? And I'm with you. I'm not a fan of TikTok, and my daughter doesn't have it, even though many of her friends do. So how have you navigated that? It sounds like you just have really honest conversations. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, if we have any regrets so far with the teens, it's been not knowing how to regulate it properly without being so restrictive that they think that they hate us. And so that's the tricky part so far. And when you start to be judgmental about their friends, or why are you wearing that shirt that shows your navel? Or why are you choosing that hairstyle? Those kinds of questions have been, dang, can I take that back? And so where I was the parent that was mostly berating them when they were younger, and now it's become almost where mommy has to lay down the law, because she was the nice one when they were younger. Now she's more laying down the law, and I'm becoming the guy that they can come to. So where my daughter comes to me, my son actually goes to my wife. And so we're kind of forming these... I don't know if it would, I think it would be called friendships, but it would mostly be called like a mentorship. And so if I can sit down with my daughter and say, hey, what was a concern with that conversation? Well, mom doesn't this and that. And then I say, okay, well, I agree with you, but here's the other problem. And so as we talk through it and as we show examples, then we say, what are the choices we can make that would be best for our family and for ourselves? Because, they represent our family, and they represent themselves. And this is a future consequence. We know this as employers. We're looking at people's past online. And so how do you help your kids make the best choices? I mean, I think it's just a matter of sitting down with them and saying, okay, let's talk through why this choice was made. Let's give you every opportunity to make a different choice if we could. And why is this important to us? Because we want it to be important to you as well. Rather than, you have to do this, I'm taking those clothes away. I mean, we've been there. And we've said, you can't have Instagram, but you can have TikTok. Like, what is that about? Well, everybody has TikTok. And so it's like, oh man, how do we navigate this whole world now? Can we teach them to make the right choices? Because we're not raising children, we're creating adults here. So
that's exactly
what we're trying to do.
That's killer. One more, sorry, Kirk. One more. I'm that parent that has been in the past because I said so. And my wife's really good at doing what you said. Hey, I'm going to treat you with respect and like you should be treated as you become older and become an adult. And we're going to have a good conversation, really open conversation, and that's a way better way to go about it. My wife's a way better example to me. If you were a younger person, right, like if you could talk to your younger self, okay, right before you had kids, and give yourself advice, what would that be?
Let mom do it. No. It would certainly be listen to your wife more and more. I mean, my wife is so brilliant at handling the human conversation. I mean, she is just so level-headed. Where I am an artist. I am an entrepreneur. I have to be a mad scientist as a human being to get through this life. And so as a dad, I bring that into my house, and then I start to freak my kids out because I'm like, well, this is what we should be doing, and this is what we can't. And my wife is just steady Eddie. It's so impressive. So if I could go back, it would be listen to what she recommends, and equally, don't be so judgmental. You know, I remember going to church even, things where I was like, I need them to be quiet. And now I look at families with the kids that age, and I have complete empathy. I do not feel like, man, it's so loud in here, they should know better. I do not think that. And I thought as a young parent that people thought that at the restaurant, at the airport, at the church, at the event. They don't think that. If you've had kids, it's usually just the people that don't have kids that are like, what's wrong with those people? You know, and so we don't need to worry about them. I wish I could go back and say, hey, cut the kids some slack. They're still children. They're growing up. And guess what? Guys, we just did parent-teacher conferences on Zoom with like 1,000 teachers. It took us like 3 hours of Zoom calls with these teachers. My gosh. I mean, it's one thing to have your teachers, the teachers of your children say, yep, they get good grades and they're doing their best and it's great. You know, that's one thing. But for them to go, oh, you're Ella's parents. Or, gosh, I love Redford. He is the light of the class. Or, my goodness, Ella, every time she comes in, she compliments my outfit. You guys need to write a book on how to raise good kids. And we're like, what are they talking about? We don't even know what we're doing. That's how these kids are. They're naturally good. Are we allowing them to be naturally good? Or are we, in my youth, am I trying to steer them to be good? Because I think all children naturally have greatness in them. It's just a matter of us not screwing it up by trying to force our own ways on them.
They're also different and individual.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to see what worked with one doesn't work with the others. Jason, you've been somebody that I've always felt like every time I'm with you, I feel like I learn something of how to be a better person and a better dad. And you helped me realize my potential as a father. And that's why we asked you, because both Corey and I know you're that type of person. We love to have people like that in our lives, and I know you've had people like that in yours. Can you tell us how we can be that to somebody else by sharing maybe a story of someone who impacted your life and helped you realize your potential?
Oh, that's very kind. Well, and I feel the same about both of you. I mean, it goes both ways, so thank you for saying that. And I guess I would have to go back to my own parents, and I'm very grateful that I was raised by goodly parents, that's for sure. But the first one that comes to mind is when school was not going well for me. I think I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and my dad came in and sat down on my bed, and he said, "Son, I know school's not easy. You know, you're the artist. You're the kid that can do the, oh, boy, hi, everybody." You can do the voices. That's great. But he said, even though school's not easy for you, if you'll read these books, your life will be better, and you will succeed. You'll succeed because you're my son. You'll succeed because you have it in you. And he sat down and set down each book that he had read as a youth as well, and that he thought would help me out. Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. I mean, you go through the books. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. He's setting down each book. 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, Covey. And as he's setting these books down, he goes, "Son, if you can read these books and give me a report on them, you will succeed." I mean, I couldn't even get through Spot the Dog. like it was kind of an insane idea that I could get through Hafid, the rug salesman or whatever, and the Greatest Salesman. And I'm like, what am I going to do here? And I started into the first scroll of The Greatest Salesman in the World. And I did that for 30 days, which it said to do, before even going to the next scroll. And I remember doing that as a kid, as a 11-year-old kid.
Wow.
I would sit and read that every morning and 3 times a day, like it says. And I was just insane about it for months. And that changed a lot for me. To have a dad that would see something that he helped him, that could help me. And I think that's why I've leaned towards where I've gone in my career, now having a #1 Amazon book, it was #1 on self-help. And so that's pretty cool. But on the flip side of that, or not flip side, but maybe congruently, was my mother. When I came home from school, and I was sad the first day of school as a 5-year-old, and she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "They said I'm ugly and I have a big mouth." And she said, "You're not ugly, but you have a big mouth. So you just have to learn to live with that." And she said, "What do you do when they say, show us your big mouth?" I go, "Ah," and I opened it, and she goes, "Don't do that." She said, "Just smile at people." So she taught me early on that the light that we shine is the light we receive. And the more that we smile, the more that we give, the more compliments, the more joy we spread, the greater our life will be. Those were the 2 most profound lessons, I'd say.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing those with us, Jason. I'm sure your parents, that's kind of maybe a payday for them to hear some of those memories. I hope they listen and feel that. I can feel your respect and your love for your parents through the stories that you tell, and they've got to be some pretty incredible people to have raised a guy like you. So
Incredible people. Thank you.
I love The Greatest Salesman in the World. That's one of my favorite books of all time. I've had all my kids read that. I remember my wife read it for the first time. All those books are some of my favorites. Your dad, I can tell your dad's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome guy. And I'm grateful that parents would set books like that in front of me. And so now I'm doing the same with my children. When I challenge them to read the book, and, their attention spans are a bit different now because of the phones, because of all that's distractible. And so now I sit down with them and say, "Hey, let's read this." My son gravitated more towards the How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I just flipped to a chapter and said, "Check this out." He started reading it and didn't put it down. That's a classic book. All we said was, "Don't take this to school, though. We don't want anyone having you, hey, that kid's in the corner reading that book, How to Win Friends."
The first time that I saw somebody reading it, I thought, what a stupid name for a book, and why would you be reading it? It might as well be titled How to Manipulate People, right? Yeah. And I actually even told the guy that, and he was like, "No, it's actually a really good book. You should read it." And I did about 1.5 years later, and I was very humbled when I read it to think, this is what he was reading, probably to get along better with people like me.
Nice.
But I love that book. I remember when my grandpa handed me The Greatest Salesman in the World and said, read this, it'll change your life. And so it's cool that we all have memories of someone giving us that book. So if you haven't read that book or given it to your kids, might be one to put on the list. Another book that you should put on your list to share with your family and with your kids is The Promise to the One by Jason Hewlett. It's available on Amazon.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold.
I like it. And look Jason up. He's one of those people that it's worth your time to follow him. Your time is precious. We appreciate you spending it with us. But Jason's productions that he puts together are purposeful, meaningful, and you won't regret following Jason Hewlett on social media when he installs the apps and and reading his books, because he is seriously one of the most purposeful people that I know in my life. And we just want to thank you for coming on today, Jason. You're an incredible guy. And you have anything else or anything else that you would like to have people do? Follow you? What's your website?
JasonHewlett.com. And you know what might be fun if they wanted to, if they were just to text JHE to the number 22828. JHE 22828. They would just get a couple of inspirational emails, great stories, funny videos, things they could watch with their family, share with their teams. If you're a leader that's listening and wondering what could I share on a Monday morning motivation meeting, that's something you could share. And then on Sunday mornings, eventually you'll start getting my weekly emails that I write a blog that's very, very robust, and a lot of people read it. And yeah, it's been a huge promise to write that every week and make sure that it comes out regardless of how you feel, and to share something with people that are like, wow, that inspired me, that helped me with my health or whatever it may be. So that would be how you connect. That'd be great.
Very cool. Say that again one more time for folks.
JHE 22828.
Okay. Thanks, Jason.
Jason, thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you. One of my favorite guys in the world. So entertaining, and I'm going to have you to my company here shortly to do a Zoom meeting to the company. I would love that, actually.
Let's do it.
We're going to do it.
We're just going to be like, hey, man, this is what happens when you make the new Salt Lake Airport. And then everybody will be like, this is a celebration. Woohoo! Congrats on all your success, dude.
That's what I'm talking
Congrats on all your success.
Thank you,
Both of you guys. I'm so honored to be here with you, and I'm proud of you as men that have done great things. It's really neat to surround yourself with people that you want to be like. That's what you are for me.
That's why we invited you here today.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you, Jason. That was amazing podcast. Kirk, talk to us about your biggest takeaway.
I loved Jason's advice on working from home and adapting to the changes that we've all seen in the year 2020. He gave some awesome advice. If you didn't hear that or it slipped by you, go back and listen to it again. It's totally worth it.
Like and subscribe to the Gentleman Project podcast on your favorite platform, or go to thegentlemanproject.com.
Thanks, Corey. Talk to you guys next week.